Someone drove her car, parked it a mile away, and then walked directly past a camera. For 20 years, no one has been able to identify that person. Not the police, not the FBI, not even her family. Because every time that figure passes through the frame, their face disappears behind a fence. Perfectly. Every single time. Jennifer Kesse woke up that morning, got ready for work, and vanished before she ever made it out of her own parking lot. No struggle, no witnesses, no explanation. Just a car, a camera, and one unidentified figure who knows exactly what happened. So the question is, who are you? And where is Jennifer? Jennifer Kesse was 24 years old. She had her own condominium. She had a career she had built from scratch. She had a boyfriend she had just come home from vacation with 2 days earlier. She had a family who knew her schedule the way families do, who knew that if she didn't call, something was wrong. Who knew within hours that something was very, very wrong. Her car was found a mile from her home. On the surveillance footage from the complex where it was abandoned, a figure walking away from the vehicle, unhurried, calm, moving through the frame like someone with nowhere to be and nothing to fear. That figure has never been identified. Not in 20 years. Not with the FBI involved. Not with 16,000 pages of police records. Not with a family that refused to stop fighting, that sued the Orlando Police Department, that assembled a private team of former federal agents, that has spent 2 decades doing what law enforcement couldn't. And here is what makes the Jennifer Kesse case different from almost any other disappearance you have ever heard. She didn't vanish without evidence. She vanished despite it. There is footage. There is DNA. There is a car, a timeline, a figure on a screen who walked away with whatever they knew and has stayed silent for 2 decades. And somewhere in Orlando, Florida, or somewhere beyond it, the answer to what happened to Jennifer Kesse exists in a memory, in a conscience, in the silence of someone who has been living with this since January 2006. Today, we are going to Orlando. We are going to walk every step of Jennifer's last known morning. We are going to sit with every clue, every theory, every failure, and every moment of relentless love that her family has poured into finding her. And we are going to look that figure on the surveillance footage directly in the frame and ask the question that has never been answered. Who are you? And where is Jennifer? Before we get to that footage, before we stand in that parking lot and watch someone walk away from Jennifer's car, you need to know who Jennifer Kesse was, not the case file, not the missing persons flyer. Her. Jennifer Joyce Kesse was born on May 20th, 1981, in Tampa, Florida, the second of 2 children. Her parents, Drew and Joyce Kesse, raised Jennifer and her brother Logan in the kind of home where ambition was expected and hard work was the language everyone spoke. Jennifer absorbed that completely. She was driven not in the aggressive, sharp-elbowed way that word sometimes implies, but in the quietly determined way of someone who simply knew what she wanted and went and got it. She attended the University of Central Florida in Orlando, graduated in 2003 with a degree in finance. And then she did something that a lot of people her age were still talking about doing. She actually built the life. By the time she was 24, she was working as a finance manager at Central Florida Investments, a timeshare company in Ocoee. She had bought her own condominium, her own place. A unit at the Mosaic at Millennia Complex in Orlando, a building that was still under construction at the time. Workers on the property every day, scaffolding and noise, and the constant presence of people she didn't always recognize. Jennifer had noticed some of them noticing her. She had mentioned it to people close to her that some of the construction workers made her uncomfortable, that certain looks had lingered a beat too long. She was cautious about it. She was aware. She was a woman living alone in a building full of strangers, and she trusted her instincts enough to name the discomfort out loud. That detail, that small, ordinary act of saying something felt off, would become one of the most important threads investigators ever pulled. The weekend before she vanished, Jennifer had been on vacation in St. Croix with her boyfriend, Rob Allen, a proper break, sun and water and distance from the ordinary routine. They came back on Sunday, January 22nd, 2006. Jennifer spent Sunday night at Rob's place. Monday morning, she drove straight to work. By all accounts, she was in good spirits. The vacation had been good. She was settled. She was grounded. She was looking forward to the week ahead. Monday evening, she spoke to her father, Drew, while driving home from work. Around 6:15 inches the evening, a normal call, the kind of check-in that families do without thinking about it. She told him she was heading home. They said goodbye. That night, around 10 p.m., she called Rob. They talked for a while. The conversation was warm, normal. They made plans. He told her he loved her. She told him she loved him too. She hung up, and somewhere in the apartment she had worked for and paid for and made her own, Jennifer Kesse went to sleep, not knowing that the next morning would be the last morning anyone would ever hear her voice. Tuesday, January 24th, 2006. Jennifer's routine was precise. She woke up early. She exercised. She was disciplined about it. The kind of person who treats the morning as something to be used rather than survived. She showered. She got dressed for work. Before she left, she always sent a message or made a call. Every morning, without fail, a text or a call to Rob to say she was on her way. It was not a big thing. It was just what they did. A small signal that said the day had started and everything was fine. That Tuesday morning, no message came. Rob waited. Then he called. Her phone went straight to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. He assumed maybe she had left in a rush. Maybe her phone had died. He told himself it was nothing. People run late. Phones die. He went to work. At her office, in Ocoee, Jennifer had a meeting scheduled for first thing that morning. She didn't show up. She didn't call. She didn't send a message to say she was running late. Her colleagues tried her phone. Voicemail. Again and again. And then, because this was not Jennifer, because Jennifer was the person who showed up and who always called, they contacted her parents. Drew Kesse received the call that every parent dreads. His daughter's workplace was asking if he knew where she was, if everything was okay. He and Joyce immediately made the 2-hour drive from Tampa to Orlando. When they arrived at Jennifer's condominium at the Mosaic at Millenia, they found her apartment unlocked. Her personal belongings were inside, her purse, her keys to the apartment. Everything that a person does not leave behind when they choose to go somewhere. But Jennifer's car, her white 2004 Chevrolet Malibu, was not in her parking space. Drew Kesse called the Orlando Police Department, and the investigation into the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse officially began. It would take 3 days to find the car, 3 days during which the trail grew colder with every hour that passed. 3 days during which the most critical window any disappearance investigation has, the first 24 to 48 hours, slipped by. The car was found on January 26th, abandoned at the Huntington on the Green apartment complex on Americana Boulevard, about 1 mile from Jennifer's condominium. It was parked neatly, orderly, not dumped in a panic, positioned in a parking space as if someone had taken the time to make it look like it belonged there. Inside the car, investigators found something that would become the subject of enormous scrutiny. On the steering wheel, DNA. Genetic material that did not belong to Jennifer. Someone else had been in that car. Someone else had driven it a mile from her home, parked it carefully in someone else's complex, and walked away. And that walk, that final, unhurried exit from Jennifer Kesse's vehicle, was caught on camera. The Huntington on the Green complex had surveillance cameras, and when investigators pulled the footage, they found what they were looking for. A figure, caught on tape, walking away from Jennifer's car after parking it. The figure walks with a particular gait, deliberate, not rushing, the body language of someone who is not afraid of being seen. But the footage, the single piece of visual evidence that placed a real human being at the scene of Jennifer's abandoned car, was grainy, low resolution, and a fence ran along the bottom portion of the frame, cutting off the legs and obscuring the lower body in a way that made it almost impossible to extract meaningful details. Investigators looked at that footage for years. They enhanced it with whatever technology was available. They brought in experts. They released the image publicly, asking anyone who recognized the walk, the posture, the build, anyone who recognized anything to come forward. 20 years passed. Nobody ever identified that figure with certainty. The image became one of the most analyzed pieces of surveillance footage in the history of Florida missing persons cases. Online communities spent years studying every pixel. They noted the figure appeared to be of medium build. They noted the clothing. They noted the walk. They debated endlessly whether the figure was male or female. The resolution was too poor to say definitively. And that figure, that person who walked away from Jennifer's car on January 26, 2006, on a bright Florida morning with no apparent concern for the camera pointed at them, has never been held accountable for a single thing. Not yet. Now, the theories. Because this is the part of Jennifer Kesse's case where investigators have had to make peace with uncertainty for a very long time, where the evidence points in a clear direction without quite arriving anywhere. The construction worker theory is the one that has never gone away. Jennifer had expressed discomfort about certain workers at her complex. These were people with regular access to the property, regular access to the parking areas, regular proximity to the building, to its residents, to the routine of who came and went and when. Investigators pursued this thread hard in the early days of the case, but they ran into a significant obstacle almost immediately. Many of the construction workers at Mosaic at Millennia were undocumented immigrants. Many spoke little or no English. Many had already left the site by the time investigators came looking, and those who remained were, understandably, reluctant to speak with law enforcement. The language barrier was severe. Even the detectives assigned to the case described it as one of the most difficult investigative walls they had ever encountered. Jennifer's family has never stopped believing that the answer lies somewhere in that workforce, that someone who was on that construction site in January 2006 knows what happened, that someone saw something, or did something, or knows someone who did and has chosen, for 20 years, to carry that knowledge in silence. There is also the question of what happened inside Jennifer's condominium before she left that morning. She exercised, she showered, she got dressed. At some point between getting ready and getting in her car, something went wrong. The question is whether it went wrong inside the apartment, in the parking lot of her complex, or somewhere on the route between her door and her car. Investigators believe she was abducted from the parking lot of the Mosaic at Millennia, that she made it to her car, that whoever took her was already there or got to her before she could drive away. The theory is that she was forced into her own vehicle, driven somewhere, and the car was then moved a mile away and left. But where Jennifer was taken and what happened to her after that car left her complex has never been established. 20 years of investigation, 20 years of tips, searches, leads, dead ends, and silence. And then, 2025, something shifted. In December 2022, the Jennifer Kesse case was officially transferred to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Cold Case Unit. The FDLE, a state-level agency with more resources, more independence, and more investigative firepower than a local police department, took over. And they went to work. By May 2025, what would have been Jennifer's 44th birthday, the FDLE made an announcement that her family had been waiting nearly 2 decades to hear. The case was no longer cold. They had interviewed approximately 45 people since taking over. They had gone through thousands of pages of documents. They had identified several persons of interest. And crucially, they announced that evidence which had never been tested for DNA had now been tested. Previously, the Orlando Police Department had stated that DNA was only found on the steering wheel of Jennifer's car. The FDLE found DNA on evidence that the OPD had never tested. Evidence that had been sitting in storage for almost 20 years. Evidence that could potentially identify, for the first time, the person who took Jennifer Kesse. Drew Kesse, Jennifer's father, described the moment he heard this news. He said he had never felt more positive in all the years since Jennifer disappeared. He said the FDLE told him directly it is not cold anymore. There is too much work to do, and it is fruitful work. He said investigators were down to just a few people on their persons of interest list, that they had been able to disqualify a large number of individuals through interrogations and investigation, that the circle was closing. And then, in October 2025, another announcement. The FDLE confirmed that artificial intelligence was now being applied to the case. AI technology was being used to analyze all available case information, including the grainy surveillance footage that has taunted investigators for 2 decades. For the first time, there is a real possibility that the figure walking away from Jennifer's car, that blurry, fence-obscured image that has been stared at by thousands of people for 20 years, might finally have a face put to it. Drew Kesse said something about that footage that stays with me. He said he has never stopped believing that whoever that person is, they are still out there, still in contact with people, still living a life somewhere, and that somewhere in their world, someone knows who they are. He said the FDLE told him they have the best opportunity to find Jennifer that they have ever had. He said all we need is just a piece of Jennifer. This is the moment, right here. Before we go any further, if you have been sitting with this story, if the weight of Jennifer's disappearance is sitting on your chest the way it should, this is exactly what this channel is for. Not for numbers, not for an algorithm. For this. For sitting in the dark with stories that matter and refusing to let them go quiet. Please, subscribe right now, hit the notification bell, leave a comment below, tell me what you think happened in that parking lot on the morning of January 24th. Tell me who you think that figure is in the surveillance footage. Tell me what 20 years of silence from one person means to you. Share this video, because Drew and Joyce Kesse are in their late 60s now. Drew said it himself, they have had health issues, 2 bouts of cancer between them. They are not going to be around to keep fighting forever. Every share is one more person who sees Jennifer's face, one more signal sent into the world, one more chance that the right person sees this and finally picks up a phone. We are not done. Because the story of what this disappearance did to Jennifer's family and what they did back to the system that failed her is one of the most extraordinary acts of love I have ever encountered in 20 years of true crime. Drew and Joyce Kesse were 48 years old when their daughter disappeared. They are now 68. 20 years. That is what this case has taken from them. 20 years of their lives, their health, their sleep, their peace. Drew Kesse has said publicly that he has not slept a full night since January 2006. 4 hours a night, for 20 years. Lying awake in the dark, running through the same questions, the same timeline, the same grainy footage, the same faces he has memorized from 16,000 pages of police records. Because they got those records. That is the thing about Drew and Joyce Kesse, that you need to understand. When the system failed Jennifer, they didn't sit down and grieve quietly. They became something the system was not prepared for. In 2018, 12 years after Jennifer vanished, Drew and Joyce filed a lawsuit against the city of Orlando, the Orlando Police Department, and the mayor's office. They cited a botched investigation, missed opportunities, evidence that was never tested, leads that were never followed with the urgency the case demanded. They said the system had failed their daughter, and they wanted the files to prove it. They won. The city handed over 16,000 pages of records relating to Jennifer's case. 16,000 pages. The first time in Florida history that a family successfully obtained records from an ongoing investigation. And Drew Kesse sat down and read every page. He built a team, 13 people, including former US Secret Service agents and former FBI investigators, to go through everything with him. He didn't hire lawyers and let them fight. He joined the fight himself. He learned the investigation from the inside out. He became, over 20 years, one of the most knowledgeable private citizens in the state of Florida on the details of his own daughter's disappearance. And when the FDLE finally took over the case in 2022 and started actually working it, Drew Kesse was the one who had been asking them for 2 years to use artificial intelligence on the footage. 2 years of pushing, 2 years of saying there is technology that can do what we couldn't do in 2006. And we need to use it. Until in July 2025, investigators told him they were working with an AI company on the entire case. 3 production companies approached the family about making a documentary. Drew Kesse wants it on Netflix. He said, I want the biggest audience. Because the bigger the audience, the more people who see Jennifer's face, the more people who might recognize something, the more signals that go out into the world and come back as answers. He said one more thing that I cannot get out of my head. He said it is in my DNA that I am going to find my daughter, period. 20 years of 4-hour nights, 2 bouts of cancer in his family, death threats, extortion attempts, 16,000 pages of police records, a private investigative team, a lawsuit against the city, an AI company working on the footage, and still period. Jennifer Kesse called her father while she was driving home from work on the evening of January 23, 2006. She told him she was heading home. They talked for a few minutes. She said goodbye. She called Rob that night at 10 p.m. They talked. She told him she loved him. And then she went to sleep in the condominium she had worked for and earned and made her own. In a building full of strangers, she had started to feel uneasy around. In a city where somewhere, someone was already watching. The next morning she got up and got ready for work. She did not call Rob before she left. She did not text him. And in the silence of that missing message, the small signal that said the day had started and everything was fine, the world changed. Someone walked away from her car on a Tuesday morning in January, calm and unhurried, caught on camera, and disappeared into 20 years of silence. And her father, who has not slept a full night since, has been sending signals into the dark ever since, waiting for one to come back. If you have ever seen anything, if you were in Orlando in January 2006 and something has sat in you since then, if you know someone who changed after that month, who said something, who knew something, who carried something they shouldn't have been carrying, the FDLE tip line for Jennifer's case is still active. I will put it in the description below. Because Drew and Joyce deserve to find their daughter. Because Jennifer deserves to come home. Because whoever walked away from that car on Americana Boulevard needs to know that the footage has not gone away. That the DNA has not gone away. That the AI is looking now. That the circle is closing. And because somewhere in this world, Jennifer Kesse is waiting to be found. Please, subscribe, ring the notification bell, drop a comment, tell me your theory, tell me what you think happened, tell me what this story did to you, share this video. Share. One more signal. We have more cases coming, more signals to follow, more stories told with everything they deserve: depth, truth, and absolute respect for every woman, every man, every person whose life became a headline before it should have. Jennifer, we see you. I will see you on the next one.